Willard is a deeply introverted man who lives alone with his aging mother, Mrs. Stiles, in a house that feels suffocating, dark, and neglected. The place is falling apart, and the basement is crawling with rats. It gets so bad that Willard finally goes out to buy traps, hoping to get the infestation under control. At home, things are not much better. Mrs. Stiles is old and constantly ill, but that does not stop her from belittling her son. Without even realizing it, she reminds him over and over that his life has no direction, that he has never had a girlfriend, that he has never truly become someone. You can already see the kind of man Willard has grown into. He struggles to socialize, feels trapped inside his own home, and the unhealthy environment around him slowly shapes who he is. One night, he cannot sleep. He hears dozens of traps snapping in the basement. For a moment, it sounds like victory. But when he goes downstairs, every single rat has escaped. Not one trap has worked. Willard works at a factory that was originally founded by his late father, Mr. Stiles, who took his own life years ago. You would think the business would have passed down to Willard, but instead it is run by his father's trusted associate, Mr. Martin. The reason is simple. No one believes Willard is capable of handling it. Life at work is just as miserable as life at home. Mr. Martin is cruel and openly humiliates Willard in front of the other employees. On top of that, he secretly hires a new employee named Catherine to replace Willard because he is too slow processing orders. The only reason Willard is not fired outright is out of so-called respect for his late father, and it does not stop there. Mr. Martin suggests that Willard should send his mother to a nursing facility and sell the family home. He even offers to buy the property himself and turn it into luxury apartments. Willard, who has always struggled to speak up for himself, says nothing. He just swallows his anger and walks away. Mr. Martin, of course, insults him again for being disrespectful. That night, Willard tries a different kind of trap, glue boards instead of metal ones. This time, he catches a single white rat. Instead of killing it, he feels sympathy. He gently frees the rat and names him Socrates, after the famous Greek philosopher, because the creature seems intelligent and impossible to catch.
You should be called Socrates.
Willard brings Socrates back to the basement so he can reunite with the other rats, and even feeds them. For a man who has never had a real friend, this small connection means everything. Willard is so overwhelmed that he cries. He invites Socrates to sleep in his room and promises that no one will ever hurt him. And in that quiet moment, we are finally left alone with Willard.
Willard.
The next morning at work, Mr. Martin deliberately locks Willard inside the elevator as punishment for being late too many times. Then he proudly announces that he has bought a brand new Mercedes to show how successful he is, claiming that his discipline and punctuality are the reasons he can afford such luxury. He makes sure to compare himself to Willard, mocking his slow work, and even criticizing his worn-out clothes, which once belonged to his late father. You can see the anger building in Willard's eyes, but once again he does nothing. Thankfully, Catherine steps in and unlocks the elevator gate, allowing him to get out. When Willard gets home, the first thing he does is head down to the basement to see Socrates. He vents about how miserable his day was and how much he despises Mr. Martin. As he talks, Socrates starts chewing on the newspaper Willard brought with him. Soon the other rats join in, including one massive rat that is busy gnawing on an old tire in the basement. Willard names that giant rat Ben. That is when an idea sparks in his mind. What if he could train them? What if they would listen to him? He begins buying old tires for the rats to tear apart. He sets up ropes to help them practice climbing and agility. He feeds them regularly. Little by little, the basement turns into a strange training ground, and Willard finally feels a sense of control over something. Meanwhile, his life at work keeps getting worse. Because of his constant lateness, Mr. Martin docks his pay for an entire week and warns him not to repeat it. That night, fed up and boiling with resentment, Willard places most of the rats into a bag, all except Ben, who is too large to fit. He takes the train, keeping the rats completely silent. Near midnight, he arrives at Mr. Martin's house. He orders his small army to chew through the garage door so they can get inside and shred the tires of the brand new Mercedes. To his surprise, Ben has secretly squeezed himself into the bag and followed along. When the opening in the garage door is too small for him, Ben quickly tears it wider and single-handedly destroys one of the tires. The sound of air hissing from the punctured tire brings Mr. Martin rushing down to the garage. By then, Willard has already jumped over the back fence to escape. A dog chases him, barking relentlessly, and in a panic, Willard stuffs it into the bag as well to silence it. The next morning, Willard cannot hide his satisfaction when he sees that Mr. Martin's car is missing from the office parking lot. The employees are already whispering about the ruined tires, and many of them secretly dislike their boss anyway. When Mr. Martin finally arrives, he is furious, ranting about what happened the night before. As days pass, the rats in the basement multiply rapidly. There are so many that Willard struggles to feed them. Realizing he cannot manage the growing swarm, he tells Ben to lead most of the rats somewhere else, somewhere more suitable. Only Socrates is allowed to stay with him. But Ben is not happy about that. When Willard heads upstairs, Ben quietly sneaks along, jealous of the attention Socrates receives. Willard immediately catches him and sends him back down. Only Socrates is allowed in his room. Not long after, Willard finds his mother collapsed on the stairs, her condition worsening. He tends to her, placing cold compresses on her and caring for her as best he can. Later that night, just as he is about to sleep, Ben appears again. Once more, Willard carries him back to the basement. The next morning, Willard wakes up and is shocked to find Ben sitting on his bed again, almost as if he is deliberately defying him. Before he can even process that, he hears loud noises coming from the kitchen. The hungry rats have invaded, devouring everything in sight.
Down! Down! In the basement!
Then he makes a horrifying discovery. His mother is dead, her body surrounded by rats. In Willard's mind, there is no doubt that Ben ordered the chaos. He believes Ben led the swarm to destroy the house and harm Mrs. Stiles out of jealousy, angry that he was pushed aside and denied the same affection Socrates received. Willard is devastated. With his mother gone, Socrates becomes the only companion he has left. At the funeral, no one shows up. Not a single person. It is a painful reminder of how isolated their family has always been, cut off from the world. Catherine is the only one who comes. She gently offers her support and tells Willard that he can consider her a friend. Shortly after, a representative from the bank asks to speak with him privately. The man explains that Willard's father left behind significant debts. Since they remain unpaid, Willard may have to sell the family house to cover them. Panic sets in immediately. He is already drowning in grief, and now he might lose the only place he has ever known. Then he notices something unsettling. Outside, the bank representative is shaking hands with Mr. Martin. It becomes clear that Mr. Martin has been planning to acquire the house all along, likely to turn it into luxury apartments. When Willard returns home, now overflowing with rats, Catherine follows him. She is worried about how alone he looks. Wanting to help, she gives him her beloved cat, Scully. She explains that when her own mother passed away, Scully kept her company and helped her cope with the loneliness. At first, Willard hesitates. He knows the house is already overrun with rats, but he struggles to refuse her kindness, so he accepts the cat and brings Scully inside. It does not take long for tragedy to strike again. Surrounded by hundreds, maybe thousands of starving rats, the terrified cat stands no chance. Scully becomes their prey. Later, Willard enters his mother's room and finds an envelope containing his father's belongings, items collected after his father took his own life. There are glasses, a wallet, a ring, and the folding knife that was used that night, still stained with dried blood. Overwhelmed by loss, debt, humiliation, and the crushing sense that he has no one left, Willard begins to consider following the same path. But Socrates pulls him back from the edge. In his own fragile way, the small white rat gives Willard a reason to hold on. He cannot abandon the only friend he has left. Still, fear starts to take over. He worries that Ben, now rebellious and resentful, will lead the rats against him. That night, Willard sleeps with his father's old cane beside him, ready to strike if Ben returns. And Ben does return. When Willard tries to kill him, he misses. Frustration boils over. He believes he should be the one in control, not Ben. It turns out Ben has been slipping in through a hole he created inside the wardrobe. Even though Socrates seems to urge peace, Willard is no longer interested in reconciliation. He just wants to reassert dominance. He immediately seals the hole shut, determined to prove who the real master is. But sealing the hole does not solve anything. Ben still finds a way back into the room. Not only that, he destroys the cane, almost like a warning, a message that he and his army could end Willard's life whenever they choose. In Willard's mind, it all comes down to one thing. They resent him for favoring Socrates. The next morning, before heading to work, Willard finds Ben hiding inside his briefcase. Strangely, Socrates seems calm about it, so Willard decides to bring both of them along. Once they arrive at the factory, he releases Socrates and Ben in the warehouse so they can roam around. Then everything collapses. Sitting on his desk is a termination letter. Willard is stunned. The factory was founded by his father, and there was an understanding that Mr. Martin would never fire him. Furious, Willard confronts him and insists that the business belongs to his family. But Mr. Martin does not care. His decision is final. He even challenges Willard to hire a lawyer if he wants to fight it in court. On top of that, he again suggests that Willard sell him the house so he can walk away with some money and start over. Desperate, Willard goes so far as to promise he will sell the house if he can just keep his job. At that same moment, Mr. Martin's assistant walks into the warehouse and screams in terror. When Mr. Martin hears there are rats inside, he storms in without hesitation and brutally kills Socrates. Ben hides among the boxes, watching. Willard can do nothing but stand there and cry, as the only true friend he has ever had is taken from him. That is the breaking point. Consumed by rage, Willard gathers Ben and part of the swarm into his bag and heads toward Mr. Martin, who is still working late at the office.
Look at the rats.
He unleashes years of resentment, blaming Mr. Martin for driving his father to suicide, for stealing the company, for humiliating him until he began to hate himself. Over and over, Willard strikes him with the cane. Mr. Martin tries to escape through the elevator, but Ben is already moving. He bites Mr. Martin, causing him to fall. Within moments, the swarm descends, tearing him apart until he is dead. With his revenge complete, Willard turns his attention to the basement. Now he fears the rats as much as he once relied on them. If they could kill Mr. Martin, they could turn on him too. He seals up the holes in the basement walls, leaving no openings. He sets out food to lure them in, then releases poisonous smoke to wipe them out. Afterward, he checks the basement and burns the scattered bodies. But something feels wrong. Ben is nowhere to be found. Many of the rats are missing as well. Determined to protect himself, Willard seals every possible entry point in the house, even taping shut the toilet. He places traps along the paths the rats usually take. Convinced he has finally regained control, he allows himself to sleep peacefully that night. The next day, the police show up at Willard's house. They clearly want to question him about Mr. Martin's death. Terrified, Willard hides inside until they finally leave. That night, Catherine comes by to tell him the news. Mr. Martin has been found dead in a gruesome state, and rumors say he was attacked by a swarm of animals. Willard barely reacts. Instead, he suggests they go out to eat, mostly because he is still afraid of being arrested. While he is upstairs changing his clothes, Catherine steps inside the house because she urgently needs to use the bathroom. Without knowing the danger, she removes the tape covering the toilet lid. That single mistake changes everything. Ben and the surviving rats had escaped through the sewer system, and now they have a way back inside. At the same time, Willard notices that the hole in his wardrobe has been opened again. He instantly knows Ben is behind it. When he and Catherine attempt to leave, they discover that the tires on her car have been shredded by rats. Then it gets worse. 2 police officers are still waiting nearby. Panicked, Willard rushes back inside and locks every door. He grabs a box cutter and decides to hunt Ben down once and for all. But suddenly, hundreds of rats pour out of the fireplace. He tries to barricade himself in another room, yet the rats chew through the door with frightening speed. Outside, the 2 officers grow more suspicious. They peer through the window and see Willard talking to himself, surrounded by chaos. Convinced he has lost his mind, they decide to call a psychiatric team. They also request pest control after noticing the sheer number of rats inside the house. Face to face with Ben, Willard finally apologizes for neglecting him, but it is not sincere. He tricks Ben into crawling into a bag of food where a trap is hidden. For a moment, it works. Ben is caught inside. The rest of the rats immediately attack Willard. In the struggle, Ben manages to escape, losing one of his paws in the trap but surviving. The swarm overwhelms Willard. Desperate, he calls out to Catherine for help, but when she sees his unstable behavior and the horror inside the house, she runs away. The rats flood the second floor in such numbers that the ceiling collapses. They chase Willard up toward the roof, but Ben is already there, waiting. Ben lunges at him, tearing into his face. Willard falls back into the mass of rats. In the chaos, he manages to grab the small knife that once belonged to his father. With a final burst of fury, he slashes at Ben and kills him. Willard survives, but his nightmare is far from over. Blood from Mr. Martin is still stained on his jacket, making him the prime suspect in the murder. Instead of prison, he is sent to a psychiatric hospital, declared mentally unstable. Now he sits alone, staring into nothing, forced to confront what his life has become. Then one day, a small white rat appears and begins nibbling on his bread. When Willard sees it, he believes Socrates has returned to him in another form, a sign, a second chance. And in that fragile hope, he makes a silent promise. One day at the right moment, they will escape together. In other words, the cycle is about to begin all over again. So the moral of the story is, if your only friends are rats and you start taking life advice from them, maybe fix your Wi-Fi and make human friends first.